Shabbat shalom, everybody. Since this is the first drash that I have given since my bat mitzvah, I have to call in my papi Jerry, Shlomo Yona, for whom our daughter Joni, Yonina Haya, was named. Papi taught me how to be Jewish, both by calling me every Saturday to share the parsha and through his values. Oh gosh. He was kind, loving, goofy, and generous. And it was because of Papi that I asked my parents to please join a shul so I could become a bat mitzvah. I was so behind at that point, I had to get extra tutoring, but I did it. And Papi cried tears of joy pretty much the entire time we were in the sanctuary, and some of the time at the party to follow. I was blessed to still have him in my life when our first child, Ira Lev, was born. Papi told me that his own father had not treated him with much respect, and he had me understand that honoring my children was important if my children were supposed to honor their parents. I saw a big family puzzle piece that I didn't know was missing suddenly fit together. The tenderness he raised his children with, the way he doted on each grandchild, and the advice he was giving me as an expectant first-time mother all came in part from a sense of lacking that I didn't know he had experienced, and the meaningful repair I didn't know that he had given himself and the rest of our family. This might be part of the point of this week's Parsha, and since Papi died 5 years ago at the age of 97, I will share this week's Parsha with you in his honor. This week, Moshe's parting gift to the people, Israel, before dying at the age of 120, was Ha'azinu, a poem which he received from God. It was a troublesome and memorable heads-up that idolatry would continue after the Israelites crossed the Jordan under Joshua's leadership. God foretells not only of the people going astray, but also of God's own plan of rage and eventual abandonment. The ideal way to deliver this prophetic vision was to give the people a poem. As we discussed last week, Moses gathered everyone, not just men, not just those with wealth and power. God was very clear that this was a moment for inclusion, and that even the often excluded women, children, and strangers should also all hear and learn this poem. According to nearly every translation of Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 19 that I read, the directive was that the poem be put into the people of Israel's mouths, not their ears, not their minds, not their hearts, or their eventual bookshelves. No, this poem was to go in their mouths. I was curious to research what other poems exist in the Torah. There aren't very many. Mainly just 3 big ones. First, in Exodus, when Moses, Miriam, and the Israelites sing after crossing the Red Sea. This is a poem about liberation. They get poetic again in Numbers, while in the wilderness after finding a spring. This is a poem about survival and sustenance. And now Ha'azinu, Moshe's farewell poem telling everyone that when, not if, they break the covenant, things will get gruesome with the wrath of God for them. Clearly, Ha'azinu is a very different poem from the others, which read like prayers of hope and thanksgiving. Instead, this poem describes the people using some choice adjectives, such as crooked, unworthy, perverse, dull, witless, fat, gross, and disloyal. Poetically put by God and Moses, the people will be both a treacherous breed and a nation of fools. Ouch. That's our ancestors and us we're talking about here. In hip-hop, there's a poetic form called a diss track, which is specifically written to be a verbal takedown of someone, usually a rival artist. Is Moshe's Farewell the most widely read diss track in the world? And is his mic drop that every man, woman, child, and stranger is supposed to have in our mouth really about how vile we become after our arrival in the land of milk and honey and the vengeance that God will take upon us? But then look at us. Look at what we've become, and look at all that we have endured as humans since Moshe's passing. Ouch again. So now what? I'm confident that, as God laid out in Ha'azinu, each of us can rattle what we humans are lacking. There is a lack of unconditional love. There is a lack of peace. There is a lack of inclusion. And yeah, we feel the wrath that goes along with that lacking of love, peace, and equality. Do we have an answer for the lacking? Anyone? We're a small group today. You want to call it out or pass a mic? So, what's the answer to the lacking of peace, inclusion, unconditional love? How do we get beyond this?
Empathy.
No other solution.
Practice.
I think people are allowed to say more than one word.
It's a 5-word maximum.
It's being aware and taking corrective action.
Having two minds.
I'm reluctant to say community because it was a community of Israelites that earned all of those epithets, but it does seem like community has to be a part of the answer.
Maybe it's not enough for the words to be in our mouths. They need to be in our hearts and in our souls as well.
Focusing on the micro instead of the macro and trying to do what you can do and hoping that it will spread.
Just going to say, seeing the other's needs as much as your own.
Thinking about how you opened and the love that your Poppy shared with you, and that it was a restorative process, and I'm sort of thinking about what kind of foundation we need in ourselves to be able to then feel for and offer for others, and maybe even like Pam, to what you were saying, it's not just the micro and the modeling out, but also to giving ourselves the foundation to be able to reach out.
Just building on that, I think it's also being able to reject what you've been handed.
As Sid reminded us all, do not give in to despair, and speak out when you can and act from wherever your heart calls you to act.
All really good ones. Thank you. I would say presence. For Moshe, the presence needed in his time was a singular devotion to God and to remember the Torah. For my Poppy, presence definitely meant a commitment to Judaism, and it also meant to heal his sense of lacking by being the best father, husband, and grandfather he could imagine, by being fully present for the people in his life. Clearly, we are in the midst of some dark times, perhaps foretold a long time ago. And we are the ones who must find the things that you all stood up to mention today and to find presence. But how? I think Moshe's delivery of his final words gives us a big hint. The Holy One wanted people to be able to have poetic answers for themselves when things got horrible. And this poem was to be in our mouths, to share widely after the inevitable and collective breach of the covenant. I believe that that is because when you're doing something very important, infusing it with creativity is the appropriate way to elevate it. This was not just a speech from Moshe. It is a prophetic poem to put in your mouth, to sing and to recite. Of course, this prophecy had to be imparted in a poem. Creative expression elicits a stronger emotional response. Creative expression has more potential for shifting perception. Creative expression evokes a greater depth and poignancy. Creative expression experienced by an entire community creates a communal encounter that becomes more memorable. Semir Zeki, a pioneer in the field of neuroaesthetics, discovered that while viewers take in artwork that they enjoy, the same region of their brain is activated as when they experience romantic love. Neuroaesthetics investigates the neural and biological basis of the experience of creative expressions using imaging to observe the brain's response to aesthetic stimuli. Researchers have been able to demonstrate how the arts, including poetry, help us regulate our emotions, feel empathy, and strengthen memories. God must have known that after all was lost, having a poem in our mouth might help. For those who don't know, I have made my career in the arts. Currently, I work as a curator, though for the last 25 years, I have experienced producing film and performing arts events, arts education, arts administration, and creating my own visual art and poetry. Many of you have noticed the art hanging in the lobby here at Adat Shalom. Those are prints made from fabulous paper art by a very talented local artist named Ronnie Jollis. And I'm humbled to be curating the Adat Shalom lobby now, and thank the staff here and all of you for that opportunity. And please keep an eye out for calls for art. We'll be continuing this stuff for a lot of time to come to feature the creativity of our own community as well as other Jewish artists in the DC area. Because this place is important, and we want it to look like it by adding art, and sound like it by adding music. Because for something to stand out, it should be made with intention, presence, and creativity so that it won't be forgotten, so that it stays in our mouth, lights up our brain, and reminds us of God's presence and our own. Shabbat Shalom.